check that we are live. As you can see today, the beautiful Nicolette is not with us, but I am excited to invite my amazing sister, Sarah McGregor, who, do you want to just tell us a bit about what you do, Sarah? And you're an amazing conscious channel, but just give us a bit of a background into who you are.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for having me today, Vicky. So yes, I'm an intuitive coach and energy healer. I do divinely guided healings, Pelua, but I also am a leadership development practitioner and coach. So I do a lot of organizational coaching, but also developmental coaching with clients.
Amazing. Awesome. Yeah. And she's pretty, she's really good. She kicks me up the bum quite regularly with the stuff she gets through her channel. Welcome. And if you are, so Nicolette is away with her daughter because her daughter's going off to India to study. And so Nicolette's going to be in and out some of the sessions. So Sarah might be back. Other people might come and join me in the discussions that we're having. But today in Soul Chats, we're talking about control. Ooh. And
I'm really not surprised by this, by the way, because I was triggered earlier today and I actually realized it was linked to control.
You see? So usually I would be posting on socials and I would say this is going to be our topic on like Monday or Tuesday. I would give a topic and give a bit of insight. So, but this morning I literally had 3 things coming through and then it was like, no, control is your topic. Control is your topic. So this is where we're going today, because it is something that people really struggle with. Like we talked about patience last week, Nicolette and I, and control is like the other end of the spectrum, where it's like people want to be able to be patient with things, but they can't because they're so focused on control. So just to hand over to Sarah quickly, if you had to describe control, Sarah, how would you describe it?
It's a need to know with certainty an outcome with something. That's how it would show up for a lot of people. And it's the planning and the organization and the structure that drives the end outcome. And so if you then deviate from what people often have in their head, plans, whether it is like a project management plan or just thoughts about what they want to do, and you deviate from that can then trigger a lack of control.
Yeah. And it can cause people to become quite unstable, be very reactive, and it can be really challenging. I suffer from bad triggers due to control. Like every single person on this planet has had experience with it. That is without a doubt. And there are experiences that you have all had, and I'm sure you have. So if you're watching on the replay or you jump on to watch the live, then give us some comments around your experiences where you have felt you need to be in control. One really simple one, a really funny example, really simple example is packing the dishwasher.
Oh yeah, on the toilet roll holder.
Yeah. Paying it the right way round, right? The right way round.
Yeah.
Of what's going to work for you. What other examples have you got, Sarah?
So control doesn't really show up very often for me. But I think if I am challenged, if somebody micromanages me, for example, and they try and take control of work that I'm doing, or they try and get really involved in something that I feel like I'm really au fait with, then I can get myself frustrated and triggered because of their need to control. So my reaction will quite often be as a result of other people's need to control, as opposed to me needing to be controlled. But the one today was about myself needing to control.
Because it does appear, right? And you'll find from a personal perspective with me, you'll find like if you're you're used to being a single person, you go into a relationship, you have your way of doing things. And then you have this other person who comes into your life and they have their way of doing things. And then we have to merge and get used to different ways of working and different people's perspectives and the processes and what they think is best versus what you think is best, and so on and so forth. And so that can then show up in any relationship. It doesn't necessarily need to be an intimate relationship. It can be in friendships and so on and so forth. And one place that I do see it quite strongly is where people are actually working in the energy space. There is an element of they have very strong intuition and knowing for certain people and for people. And when those people don't necessarily meet what has been guided of that person, it can feel a bit challenging and create frustration, for example. It's something that for me, way back before I realized that I was a psychic medium, was that I would be able to just know what people needed to hear and what they really should be doing in order to make their life better. I would tell them because they would ask and loads of advice and they would never do it. And then you would be like, why are they not doing it? And you would create the frustration. So what kind of emotions, Sarah, tend to come out of control?
Yeah, well, I was actually going to say, just even before we go into emotions, like one of the biggest challenges around control is ego. Like we all have an ego. Quite often we talk about ego as, you know, somebody's got a big ego, but it's that driving force that needs to be right, that needs to be the person who knows all of the information or is the go-to person, whatever it is, you know, how you identify with that. But ego can be really sort of forceful, and quite often when we want to control something, it's our ego getting in the way. Yeah,
absolutely. So that bit, when your ego is getting in the way, what can people do to recognize that that's the case?
Well, I think the first thing, like, that brings us back, swings us right back to emotions, because the first thing you will notice is your emotions feeling uncomfortable, or you might start to become a bit reactive and start to take action on things. When you sit down and breathe, you realize maybe now's not the time. Maybe it's time to just breathe and breathe through this to self-calm and self-sort of regulate. So that's the first. And the second thing, I think, is really to witness those thoughts. So to watch those thoughts either retrospectively, or if you can do it in the moment, and start to say to yourself, gosh, what are these thoughts that I'm having here? Because 9 times out of 10, they're not necessarily positive thoughts. They're quite destructive, and they can be quite self-righteous is the word I was looking for.
Yeah. And I mean like self-deprecating, like really self-destructive in negative belief patterns that will start to really, on repeat, really infiltrate your life and bring down your energetic frequency, because you're allowing yourself to bathe in those negative emotions.
That's right. You'll notice like your breathing might change. You might start to feel your emotions. Some people really feel them in their bodies. Some people are a bit more disconnected, but you might feel it in here. I was actually feeling it today right in my stomach area. And it was almost like I was on a roller coaster and we'd just done a massive dip. That was the feeling that I felt in my stomach. And that was the cue for me to say to myself, this was retrospectively, I was too far gone to recognize it in the moment.
But I love it. That's what we're about here. That's what we're all about.
And then I was able to go, gosh, that's a really uncomfortable feeling. What's the emotion? Oh, I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling frustrated. And okay, so what are the thoughts behind that? What have I been telling myself? Okay, what do I have to do with those thoughts to manage that emotion more effectively, but at the same time in tandem working with my body, because that's storing the information that's sort of embodied to support my.
Me and Nicolette have talked massively about how the body has got a lot of messages for us, and a lot of times we ignore. And one of the key signals that I know a lot of you out there will have experienced, and if you have any of these that Sarah's mentioned, what are the feelings that you're experiencing in your body? Comment and let us know, because the more that people start to understand, and the more that people start to go, oh, I'm not alone in this, then they feel that. The key one, that when I am at my worst, when I have gone down my spiral so badly, and I'm using the word badly, even though there's an element of you think you should know better, but I do this work a lot, right? So when I've gone right down and I am dipping my toe into the real darkness, it's a numbing. I have numbed myself. And this is something that I see through many of my clients. One of my initial clients that I worked with way back, it was like she had created 3 suits of armor that she was wearing that was a protection to stop her from feeling the emotions. And what we tend to find is, as we peel back the layers and we start to go, oh my God, if we can recognize I'm actually numb. It's okay to feel numb, but we use it as a signal. It doesn't mean that you are a numb person, that you're never going to feel again. And this is what's really critical, because numbing yourself is a way of controlling your management of your emotions. It's like you're scared of them. There could be a fear. And so it tends to be that control comes off the back of the fear of that needs to be done right, or there is this standard that has to be met, or and life can be very black and white where control comes into play. Do you have any examples from maybe the people you've met, or personal examples of that real black or white, I'm right, you're wrong?
Yeah. So yeah, I think particularly where people hold a lot of technical knowledge and they think that everything has a solution. When you start getting into the world of like complexity, in the sense that there are multiple things happening all at the same time, and when you obviously connect to your body and your intuition, you'll find the answers. But when you're dealing with like different projects and there's no known answers, there's a lot of uncertainty, but somebody feels like there's one solution and only one solution, that can be challenging when there are potentially 2 or 3.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing, because what control can also do is it creates a limitation in you. So if you are living the belief of the way that I want to do it is always right, and I tell you what, this still happens to me. And then, I mean, Todd's even said to me many a time, controller, 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 because you don't even realize that you're doing it sometimes, right? It's because you're feeling unsettled. But when we have that focus, we're effectively limiting ourselves. We're creating a restriction, and we are actually creating what can feel and ends up feeling for many like a feeling of being trapped or stuck, or because we're not allowing ourselves to express or see bigger picture, more perspectives, all of those things. I feel like you got something to say.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm just laughing. I've got the dog here in the background and he's shaking himself. He may want out of the room shortly, so I might have to nip off and do that.
It's okay.
He's a rascal. He's looking at me as if to say, what are you doing right now? Yeah, I was going to say as well, it's not just about being controlling of ourselves. It's about controlling others. So the challenge with that is, when we become really blinkered around control, we actually lose sight of all the different opportunities around us. And I think part of the reason we don't want to let go of it is because we're scared of what could emerge or what new is there. We're fearful.
We're fearful of the unknown, and because the unknown is uncertain, right? We don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 minutes, right? Or the next minute or the next 30 seconds, let alone the next year. And one of the
I mean, we can be pretty we can be pretty certain in our own sort of small area of, I'm in my office right now, what's likely to happen? Well, the dog probably wants to go out. But we don't know on a global scale what could potentially happen, whether there's a tsunami at one end of the earth, or something else happening elsewhere that has a knock-on effect on our lives, like COVID, for example. So when we start looking at control and we're not wanting to let go, we've really got to start to dig deeper on that. Not just recognize, like, I'm angry or frustrated, but what are we actually fearful of here? Are we fearful of change? Are we fearful of loss? Are we fearful of our capability, or what else we could potentially be doing?
A big fear that, like, just that I'm being guided to mention is, like, it's a fear of our identity. Is our identity going to be damaged if something doesn't get done that way? Like, we have a lot of perfectionists in the world, and you can be holding on tight and controlling a team of people to get things done a certain way, because you need it to be done that way, because you're worried about your reputation, or so on and so forth.
That's right, yeah. I mean, I do some work in the business world as well, and there's that whole thing of, it's always been done that way, and everybody's just in a culture of same old, and there might be a few people in there trying to change things, but the status quo has a strong hold, and that happens not just in business but in life. Like, we're all doing that. So thinking about what's behind it is really, really important, and starting to learn to recognize when you have a need for control, or when you don't like the control of others. What's that about? It's probably the same sort of thing.
And I think when you, going back to when Sarah was talking about feeling into her body and just taking a moment, the world starts to get hectic. There is a lot going on that we can't control. The majority in the world, like around us, we just can't control. The one thing that you can control is you and your response and your choice, and how you choose to come across. Right? So, and a lot of us are doing that subconsciously, and we're being just what we've always known to be, rather than being conscious in our choices, because it's what we truly desire to create. Sarah's massive on consciousness. Like, she loves this topic. But within true consciousness and making those choices, it's not about holding on tight to the choices and being controlling of your choices. Like, well, if I do that, then this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. And then that's it. Tick, done. Because when you hold on tight, the second step might not happen the way that you thought. Like, for example,
that's so
Sarah's video is not the best today, but it's like, stuff it. It doesn't matter. Like last week with Nicolette, I couldn't get the stream working properly. And then we had to divert, and we had to go over to Zoom and only stream on one channel. So you have to learn, like, first of all, you become aware of the franticness. You learn to bring yourself back, and then you choose your next choice from that space of grounded centeredness. Sorry, can't get my words out today.
Yeah, I was about to say, a lot of people who have a fear of public speaking, control is behind that. They feel out of control, particularly if they've not had experience with it, or if something's gone wrong during an experience of public speaking, they feel out of control. And so that whole sort of planner comes in, like, well, what am I going to say? I have to write it all down. I've got to practice it, rehearse it. If anything happens in the room or when I'm doing it, it's going to be so challenging. That was me. So when you were asking about examples earlier, that was me, like, going back several years ago now. But we've literally just jumped on live. Like, we honestly haven't prepared for this at all. You can probably tell.
This is what this is about. This is about true authenticity and being real, and allowing people to see the truth of it, right? I work very fluidly in some ways, but I know structure is important. There are elements on a real more personal level where control plays out a lot more strongly for me, which I'm still working through in that standpoint on an honest part for me. The speaking bit, I love. The moment I let go of, I need to say this, and this, the more free and fluid and the more trust started to be developed within me, that just knew that I was saying what exactly was meant to be said at that time. It doesn't mean that you can't prep and have a few key points and, you know, get yourself familiar, but it's trusting that if you don't get to all of those points and you only touch one, well, that was awesome in itself in that way, you know?
Yeah. Nobody died. And
no.
You can always go back and do it again.
Yeah. Do you know what? It really reminds me, years and years ago, in one of my jobs, my first ever online store manager job, running websites. There was a girl who worked beside me, beautiful Deb. And if you do watch this, Deb, hello, send you so much love. I haven't spoken to her in years. But we would literally say, we are not brain surgeons. We are not rocket scientists. Like, nobody's going to die in this room today if this doesn't get done the way that it should get done, you know? And
yeah,
I think it's the really key thing for people to be really real with. And I even had a client message me the other day, and she's like, I've got this big list of things to do. And I said, right, I want you to write down the list, get it all out your head. And I want you to score everything off on that list that isn't life-threatening. Like, that literally isn't life-threatening. Like, that you get, like, obviously you're going to need food. So if your cupboards are empty, do your food shopping, right? That, like, there's things like that. But it's like, really look and go, what do I really not need to do in order to be happy in myself? Make sense?
Yeah. It does, yeah. It does. I always say, like, what do I think I need to do versus what must I do? Like, I see people with to-do lists as long as the Eiffel Tower and, you know, project management spreadsheets, all sort of things. And I think to myself, most of that is not an absolute necessity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with them lists and, you know, thinking about what you have to do, it's like prioritization skills as well, isn't it? It's like looking at it and saying, hold on a minute, what's an absolute must here in terms of like the timelines, and where are my limiting beliefs around this? Because that's something that we actually haven't touched on, but we also carry these beliefs and assumptions. And often when we actually start to recognize that we've created a whole story about what we have to do, we lose the actual essence of it anyway. So we, you know, 9 times out of 10, we can say it's not necessary. So sort of assumptions like, oh, I have to do that because if I don't, that person's going to get annoyed with me, or that person will judge me. Or if I do this now, then if I don't do this now, we're going to have problems in the future. But hold on a minute, you know, that's sort of like looking at and foreseeing risk, but at the same time, the future doesn't even exist yet. Yeah, you know, we're not even in it. So there's so much that can happen in the future that could derail anything anyway.
Yeah, that's something that I used to get very, like, because I'm very strategic but very process, and I'm very good at building process, designing process, getting things to work better. And I'm also very futuristic in that standpoint. But one of my challenges has been getting into too much of it and overcomplicating it. So then it's not necessarily as simple. In order to stand. Simplicity is something that we're going to talk about in a whole other soul chat. But it's really critical to know that when things are overcomplicated, they don't have to be. So when you feel overwhelmed, that's why you maybe bring it back to your breath, or you sit for a moment and you really come back, because breathing is simple. It's really simple. And so we then trust that okay, then our next choice. So we're stripping it back and taking away all of the complexity out of the chaos that's being created out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the mind is a wonderful attribute when you use it well, but the mind can also be really destructive. And you know, I see that time and time again when I'm working with people, because I do coach them. I met somebody the other day. I spent an hour and 10 minutes with them, and they didn't ask me one question in an hour and 10 minutes. I had to prompt them to ask me a question, which demonstrates to me how focused on themselves they were and their problems or perceived problems. And I sometimes think that when we actually step out of ourselves and go, well, what else is going on around me? What's the big picture here? In perspective, particularly around issues where we feel like we're out of control.
Yeah, we do. And we have elements or events that happen in our life where we're literally sat there, and a problem creates more of a problem, which creates more of a problem, which creates more of a problem. Like frequency, like as Nicolette quite regularly says, we are what we attract, right? Like, so literally, if we're going to bathe ourselves in frustration or fear, for that matter, that it's not going to work out, well, that's what's going to happen. It's just all not going to work out. The challenge is that you have to be really honest with yourself, because sometimes you think that you're checking all these boxes, and you're like, yes, I've done that. So hang on, this should be working for me. But beneath it, because you're controlling, right? Tick, 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 tick. But beneath it, do you really believe that it's going to work? And what is the frequency that you're choosing to put out of there? Because you're doing all of this because you're in fear that it's not going to work, right? So it then gets to the point where you're saying,
you just want to control. Like, it's just, I'm just going to get it done. And then there's that sense of like desperation. So there's that energy around desperation, impatience.
Yeah, and that comes from a lack, though, right? That energy. So you're literally saying, if I control it and tick that, then that's done. But only when I've done that is that done. And so your energy frequency, whether it's fear, whether it's lack, whether where it's stemming from underneath your control mechanism, is where the sweet spot lies. So if you can pause yourself and go, right, this is an amazing question. I got asked by one of my coaches to ask myself a while ago, a couple of years ago now. And when you're in that space, if you ask yourself, what do I value more than fear? So if I don't get this done, if it doesn't go the way that I want it to, there's a fear there that's stemming, like underlying, you know? And so what do I value more than that? Because when you focus on what you value more than that, and I tell you, this works in a heartbeat because your frequency shifts. So an example, I was having problems with the Jeep dealership. I was having challenges with the Jeep dealership after buying my car. And I used this and I went, well, what do I value more than fear of going and sitting in a room with 5 men who are very intimidating and quite derogatory to women, right? That's the sense, and quite diminishing to women. That's the right word. And so I actually stood there and went, you know what? I value completion. I value an outcome that is going to come from this session today. Rather than me going in fearful of the beginning, I focused on, I value completion. I really value completion. So I went, okay, I'm going in for completion. So my frequency switched from fear to completion. I didn't know what was going to come out of the conversation. And partly in it, I tried to control that conversation. Hey, Kelly, how you doing? Someone else is a Facebook user, and I'm not sure where you're tuning in from, but please let us know.
Hello.
So I tried to control and direct the conversation to get the outcome that I really wanted, but what I was doing was limiting my perspective and all other options that could come from it.
And that was I was going to say that was a highly emotive situation. There was a lot of manipulation and lies on the part of the dealership. And, I would say do not ever buy a car from that particular dealership in Adelaide.
I tend to agree.
Horrendous. Yeah. But there was, a lot of manipulation in that situation as well. And so going in as a single female with 5 men around the table who were lying and telling stories, it could be really easy to kind of get fixated on what outcome do I want, and therefore I've got to control this and be so rigid in my approach to this to get what I achieve. It wasn't just Vicky that was impacted. The whole family felt emotively driven by it because we just felt so sorry for what had happened to her through that experience. And just being able to manage that emotion so that you can actually go with the flow and navigate different things is really important. Yeah. I was going to say as well, like breath work is really, really helpful.
I love that you were about to say that. I was in my head too.
Meditation, breath work, they're both massive.
Yeah, massively. I'm actually going to be running another divine alignment breathwork session. So if anybody wants to know the details of that, it's an online event that I've ran previously, and we have people from all over the world join in. If it's something that you're interested, I have this beautiful sequence that I channeled. Come and join us in that. And also on that note, because what we want to do is we want to really let go. We want to release the tension. Control creates tension. Like it just reduces everything. Like I can feel it in my body. And if you guys, you'll feel your shoulders go up. You might feel your jaw clench. You might feel your toes tighten. Things like that when you're feeling in that state or out of control because other people are running off with something and you can't say. Your body's it just creates all this tension. And so your breathwork session was amazing, Vicky. I'd love to join the next one. Please put your name in, or you can, in the link on the comments of this post, there is a link to allow Restream to put your name into the chat, so I at least know who you are. That would be amazing. Thank you.
If I would really encourage anybody join that, because you feel high as a kite afterwards, and you do feel like a sense of release.
Yeah.
I was very spaced out after doing it.
It's we did it at my retreat last year. Sarah came along and supported me at my retreat last year, my Reconnect retreat. That was just like so magical. And it was the first time Alison, beautiful Alison. And it was the first time I'd actually felt called to release the breath work and teach people it. Because I channeled it a long time ago. It wasn't something that I was taught by somebody else. It was literally channeled to me. So that's really critical. And if you want something just in the interim before that event comes, on my website, vickyluke.com, you can go and you'll see a pop-up and you can get a free letting go meditation. And it's my beautiful voice. It's just such a beautiful voice. And I will walk you through a process of letting go. So you can download that for free. And when you're feeling that tension, if you've been out at work all day, you're feeling like you've come in, you've swept up all this energy and all this crap from other people and events or whatever that's been going on, you can use that to support you in clearing it out. So please just go vickyluke.com and you will see a pop-up and you'll be able to register and download that for absolute free.
Yeah. When Vicky mentioned earlier as well about subconscious, I mean, a lot of us don't realize, but we are sort of governed by our subconscious 95% of the time. So we're only really making conscious decisions 5%. The rest of it's like habits, getting up out of bed in the morning, straight in the shower, brushing our teeth, eating our breakfast. It's only if something happens to disrupt that status quo that we have to use our conscious mind to go, oh, what's going on here? Our executive function kicks in and we're like, okay, So now I have to make a different choice, or I wasn't expecting this, so what do I do differently? And when you were talking about the subconscious earlier, it reminded me that in order to understand ourselves better and recognize control, we have to become a lot more self-reflective, and we have to become a lot more self-aware, and that takes practice. So like journaling can help with that. Journaling, you know, what's happened in your day, what did you learn about that, and asking yourself some pivotal questions. And then meditation as well can help to get you into a different brainwave state to help you start to shift some of the emotions in your body too.
Yeah, I think
on the screen.
No, I just thought you'd frozen. I thought I lost you there, so I was just like on pause, waiting to see if you'd come back. It's fundamental. I'm just laughing because I started journaling for the first time, like a really old process that I did way back in 2019, right? 2018, 2019, when I was going through my process, and I had this journal. It's sat over there right now, and it was really funny because you get to write down your goals or your vision. And so I realized mine were really, really minute. And then I looked back over what I was writing previously and went, whoa, that's magnificent, right? So if you want to claim your magnificence, you write your goals and your vision and all of those things, because you become all of that. You become everything that you're embracing. So if you can allow yourself to feel into really what you want to come, not just manufacturally and write stuff down, like just say, yes, yeah, I want to be a best-selling author, for example. It's more about get clear on your vision and what you want for you in your journaling, as well as what you're currently feeling and what's coming up. I really invite you to embody what you truly want and what it looks like. You may let go of the control of how it will all come to fruition, but it will in its own way. And you'll look back in a few years and go, wow, I remember I wrote that, you know,
and it's happened.
And it's really happened. Yeah. And so I got to see how small I've been playing in my dream and my vision. You know, we get to control what we put out there to the world, like to the universe, our energy. That's what don't dismiss your feelings, let them flow through you, but we get to play with that. So if we can control it in a positive way for ourselves that feels really good in what we're projecting and like emanating from ourselves, that's your key to your magnificent life. But it's about really immersing yourself with the feelings of what that is, rather than just manufacturally writing it all down, you know?
Yeah. And you can have fun with it. So instead of beating yourself up around, oh my goodness, I'm really feeling in control at the moment, out of control at the moment, and I'm triggered, and I sense the anger, but you can actually, I ask myself questions like, you know, why would you be feeling angry? And sometimes they're really quite amusing. And so I have fun with that. Sort of make fun of myself, but in a positive way, not in a demeaning way.
Yeah. And this is the interesting thing, because at least you've become aware of it. At least you've gone, oh my God, I'm angry. Actually, I'm fucking raging. I actually can't believe how raging I feel right now. Oh, okay. Well, do you know what? Now I've noted it. Now I've noted that it's not taking me over so much. So your awareness is allowing you to then acknowledge and accept it's okay to feel raging at times, right? It's when you allow the rage to control you over a long period of time and diminish your soul and your spirit and your essence that sits within you.
And it's when it defines the actions you take, which are reactive and in the moment. And when Vicky said earlier, I'm really into consciousness, that's really kind of what that's about. It's about not just, a lot of people are, you know, ticking off their to-do list without actually being strategic about what action they want to take, which is not only beneficial for them but for others. So, you know, it's beyond self as well. And, when we're in this sort of situation where we're not making conscious choices because we're so angry and we're just doing and saying whatever we want to say without taking responsibility or accountability for what I love to call, and I was taught, our role in the mess, mm-hmm. then, of course, we're going to end up in a cycle, which quite often can intensify and we get stuck in.
Yeah. And only we can make the decision to remove ourselves from that and do something different and break the cycle.
Yeah.
And control tends to pull you in, and really, if it's not awareness in what you're doing, it can pull you in, it can get you caught up in those weeds, and you can be literally struggling what feels down at the bottom, rather than relinquishing control and going, oh, life's actually free. It's not the way that I thought I wanted it. God, holy shit, the amount of stuff that's happened to me lately, I can't believe it. But you know what? The sun is shining. I'm still alive. I'm breathing, and everything's going to be okay. It's all going to be okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if I put my hat on today of myself about, I don't know, I lived and taught in South America, and if I put the hat on before South America, where I was standing up, would never have stood up in front of students or people in a classroom without planning. I would have been here today having spent most of the morning preparing, which would have meant that I couldn't have done other things that were important or enjoyable. It might not have been today, it could have been yesterday, but instead I'm able to, what I like to call, wing it.
Yeah.
Enjoy it and go with the flow and, make mistakes, because part of the challenge for a lot of people who like to be in control is they are so scared of failure and making mistakes. And actually, when we make mistakes or we do things that we don't expect, then we can learn from that and it helps us grow. And actually some really fantastic things can come from it. Like, we can be more creative, or we might say something really inspiring that we've never thought of before. But if it was all predetermined, then it wouldn't happen.
No, it wouldn't. And it'd be very rigid, and it'd be very structured, and it'd be very old school. And I know the world. We were at a Women in Business. Was that the International Women's Day luncheon on Friday? And there was 2 speakers, beautiful ladies, and just authenticity was the key. And when you're in control, you're not necessarily being authentically you. It's there's got to be an element of trust that comes, and we've got to learn to relinquish that control. So, hey Heather, how you doing? And so I invite you all to start to become more aware. Take all the hints and tips that Sarah and I have given you today and our insights. I hope, please give us some feedback in terms of what's been your kind of biggest takeaway from today. And also, if you do have any questions around Sarah and her coaching, then please reach out. You can reach out to her directly or comment on one of the posts, and she will get back to you that way too. She's amazing at what she does, and I will certainly keep you guys posted. I'll put a link to the event once it's set up for the breathwork and divine activation that I'll be running again really soon. So any final words to say before we wrap up, Sarah?
I just want to say, first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for your very kind words. And also, I really enjoyed it. So hopefully I'll be back at some point in the future.
You'll be back.
And really nice to see all of you ladies on here today as well. So following us, and I look forward to connecting with people afterwards.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to everybody who's joined us during the live and during the replay. And as always, if you have any questions about anything that we've said, please comment or reach out directly and message. And that's my dog at the door now wanting in. And message and we will get back to you. But please, for now, just take my thanks, and we will be back. I think Nicolette's back with me next week. But we'll be back next week with another Soul Chats midday on Wednesday at Adelaide time, and we will see you next week. Take care, guys. See you
Take
soon.
care. Bye.